Okay. And I am going to try and pay attention over here to make sure nobody gets left in queue on waiting for me to allow them in. So thank you very much for attending the Nextaff overview. I have a handful of slides that we're going to go through and open it up for questions at the very end. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to jump right in and start talking about Nextaff. So Nextaff is a very simple concept, and it's based under the premise that companies are always looking for quality people, and people are always looking for the right job. Our franchise owners simply match those jobs up to the companies, and we charge a fee for doing so. It's a pretty simple concept. We've been fortunate enough to win a handful of awards. Franchise Business Review, the last few years, we've been in their top 50 for satisfaction. We just won the top franchises culture for 2020. We've been in Inc. 500, I think, 5 times. E&Y, Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year, were regional finalist. The FranServe Fantastic 500, and then one that just came out a few days ago, which is the Entrepreneur Franchise 500. We were ranked number 475. Let me admit. All right. I had to allow a couple other people to join. So our story. So myself and James, we started the company in 1998. We built up 10 offices in 18 months, and then we sold those initial offices back in 2003. What we did, though, was we were fairly young, and even though we knew a lot about staffing, we did not know anything about the back office, anything about the processes, the work comp, the insurance. And so in 2004, we launched Nextaff with the idea that there were probably a lot of people out there like us that had either B2B sales experience, or maybe they even had staffing experience, but they didn't really necessarily know how to run a staffing business. And they certainly didn't know the back office component of it. So we launched in 04. We sold franchises for a handful of years up through the Great Recession. And what we did during the recession was we actually bought a payroll and a PEO company to diversify the franchisees' service offering. So rather than put out new franchises in a declining market, we actually diversified their offering. And because of that, we were actually able to grow 15% during the recession when most of the industry was down 20, 30%. So we did that for a number of years, and we eventually had a successful exit out of the PEO and payroll space. That business that we sold off in 2016 is now a part of Paychex. And we started looking at revitalizing the franchise world. And in late 17, we started franchising again. And now 2020, at the end of 2020, rolling into 2021, we actually have awarded 30 franchise units, and we actually have 25 that are currently open. Excuse me. So why now? The staffing industry has grown from 81 billion in 09 to 151 billion in 2019. So staffing agencies, you'll find out, are in high demand on both low and high unemployment. And then it's a very cost efficient way for businesses to find the right employees. One of the questions we're getting right now is, with the change in administration, is that going to impact your business at all? Well, you can see that in 09, not only were we in a recession period, but with the change to the Obama administration, you can see the industry actually doubled. So what you find out in a business like ours is, since we take over the complexity of payroll, anytime you have an administration that makes it more difficult to become an employer, that actually can work in our favor. And so you're seeing this ongoing, executive orders and discussed legislation, everything from the National Labor Relations Board to, who's going to be on the courts. The more difficult it becomes to be an employer, the more likely it is that somebody's going to just seek to outsource that to us. So we're very bullish on the immediate future. So why Nextaff? I'm going to go through some high points here, keep it at a high level, but we're going to talk about our X factor. We're going to talk about our economics, some of the various verticals that we offer, how we are reducing our royalty fee to make it advantageous for somebody to start early on with us, and advantageous as they build and grow, the territory size, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our back office. So the X factor is it's a proprietary method. We spent about a year researching all of the ways that you could basically hire a quality worker, and what was statistically proven that would lead to a quality hire. And so what we did is on the chart you see there below, we basically put it on a correlation chart. And on the right-hand side of that chart, you can see that what most traditional staffing suppliers use as their hiring metrics or their hiring tools, job experience, education, age, unstructured interview, and reference checks, are actually the least likely predictors of a quality hire. But it's typically what everybody does. And it's because that's how they were hired and that's how they were hired. And nobody really in a business spends the time to figure out why it's not working. And that's because somebody that wants to go open a restaurant, they don't go open a restaurant because they want to hire a bunch of employees. They want to open a restaurant because they enjoy cooking or they enjoy servicing the client. No different than manufacturing a widget. They don't go into that business to hope to one day hire and manage 100 people. So the hiring process we've seen over 100 years has always taken a back seat to the core business that person operates. So over the course of a year, we did the research, and you can see there's a far more predictive tools to use to determine a quality hire. And basically what we do is we sit down with a client, we talk to them about what has worked for them, what is not working for them, and then we customize a package for them based on those answers, and then based on metrics and exit interviews, et cetera. And we start to customize that down to their specific X factor routine that helps us drive a higher quality employee. The economics are item 19. We have annual gross revenues of nearly $2 million. We have an annual gross profit of nearly $400,000. And then our median break even is only 7 months. So we use, on our economics, we use our definition of a mature office as anybody that's been open at least 12 months. So you do have some fairly young offices that are in those metrics, but that's what our item 19 lists. Multiple verticals. We do allow a different vertical, multiple verticals, depending on which expertise you bring to the table. So the majority of people that we talk to do come into the commercial element, and that's where you can do professional, you can do light industrial, you can do manufacturing. It encompasses about 75% of the market out there with really no training, no expertise, no background. If you come to us with a healthcare background, we have a healthcare vertical that you could operate. And if you come to us with an IT background, we have an IT vertical that you can operate. The franchise agreement is good for a single vertical. It does not encompass all three of them. It's good for one vertical. The reduced royalty fees. So an important differentiator between us and many of our competitors is that we have a royalty fee based on gross wages, not on gross revenue and not on gross profit. It's a simple concept. It is a little complicated when you try and get down into the exact numbers of comparing, okay, I'm looking at Work, or I'm looking at Express, or I'm looking at Nextaff. But it's one of the reasons why we did our item 19 the way that we did is that we show across our offices, we show what the gross revenue is, we show what the gross wages are, and we show what the gross profit is. And that way, if you have, if you're comparing other brands, or if you're a consultant and you have somebody that's looking at different things, it's an easy way to compare the royalty fees. But we are traditionally 15 to 40% more cost effective by doing our royalty model that way. The other thing we did is we eliminated the royalty and the marketing fees for the first 6 months of operation. It's hard enough to get your business off the ground with all the other costs that are associated with it. We kind of front end load all of our service and everything else. We're spending an enormous amount of time with you, and kind of to double down on that, we decided that we would just eliminate any royalty or service or marketing fees for the first 6 months from the date you signed the franchise agreement, which is a good deal. Territory size. Fortunately for us, we did not get in the franchise business and staffing until kind of later in the evolution of staffing. Some of the older models you'll see are based on the idea that you needed to have an office in all the corners of a market because, frankly, 20 years ago, all the field employees or the temps would have to come to your office to pick up their paycheck every single week. So you needed to have locations scattered in every single little quadrant of a city. Today, that's not necessary. Everything's online, everything's automated. We don't do hard checks. It's all direct deposit or pay cards. So what that has allowed us to do is it's allowed us to eliminate overcrowding of a market. And now the benefit to the new franchise owners is that their territory size is considerably larger. In most cases, I would say out of the 400 or so territories that are available, probably 90% of those is the entire county. So it's extremely large compared to other competitors. The back office support. So this graph here is a little cumbersome at first, but if you just focus your attention on the orange line, which is franchise owner at first, what it does is it really shows you a high level overview of what a franchise owner's responsibility would be in this business. So in the sales and marketing component, it's going to be to identify and acquire clients. Really, that's what you're looking for. People that are looking to hire individuals, people that are looking for quality employees. On the operations side, you're fulfilling the client's needs. So you're recruiting candidates. On the management side, you're determining your goals, you're executing your objectives. And then on the finance side, you're really responsible for time entry and then client billing. Client billing is an automated process, but it is pretty much a click of a button and invoices go out. So it's a very, very simple process. If you then go below the orange line, you get into the blue line, the franchisor. What we do at a high level is, we're always innovative. We're always improving the X Factor process that we have. We do verified prospect lists for all of our offices. We have an automated multi-touch content campaign to drive appointments. In the operations side, we have the industry-leading staffing software, an automated job board. All of our documents are electronic. You move into the management side. We handle all your employee compliance. We do benchmarking every week, compensation metrics, and then we handle with all your labor law, any of your compliance, any of your HR issues. All of that stuff is handled at our level. You don't have to worry about that. You always have a resource to take care of that. And then really some of the heavy lifting gets on the finance side. We take care of all the payroll financing. We post all your payments on a daily basis, and we process all the payroll, the tax, the work comp, the unemployment, everything that has to do with processing payroll and hiring employees. So really what we've designed this model to be is go out there and find clients, go out there and find employees, match the two up, lead your team, make sure their hours are correct on a weekly basis, and then the rest of it is handled kind of below the level with the franchisor level. So the investment, we offer discounts for multi franchise locations. So the single franchise location is $40,000. To do a 3-pack, it's $96,000. To do a 5-pack, it's $144,000. The initial investment ranges between $123,000 and $152,000. And then our royalty, as we mentioned, is based on gross wages, but we do offer breakpoints. So for every $1 million in gross wages you achieve, your royalty drops by a quarter point. And you go up another $1 million, it drops by another quarter point. The great part about this is that once you achieve a break point, you'll never go backwards. So if you have a really great year and you get these break points and it lowers your royalty fee down, if you have a subsequent poor year, your royalty fee is not going to go back up. It's always going to stay at the lowest level that you've obtained. So with our discounts, break points, and milestones, renewals, you have an opportunity to get your royalty fee reduced by about 40%. And then we do offer a veteran discount of 20%. Daily operations is pretty straightforward. Now, this has some caveats based on your vertical. So the hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, on-call and remote work sometimes necessary. I would say that's going to be very dependent on, one, the vertical that you're in, and then two, kind of the niche within each vertical. For example, obviously, IT is a great example. IT is, a lot of times pretty much Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You're not really on call. There's no remote work. If you're doing professional, administrative, clerical, customer service, a lot of times, same thing, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. If you get into manufacturing and they have second shifts or third shifts, that's where some of that off-site activity occurs. And then finally, when you get into healthcare, obviously healthcare runs, 365, 24/7. That stuff's running constantly. So it is a little more vertical dependent. Starting out, it's a very low barrier to entry on employees. Typically, it's the franchise owner and one recruiter. Some people do choose to bring on an admin and a second recruiter in training immediately, but I would say most wait probably 3 months, 6 months between bringing that third person on. And then the store specs are very small. It's you could do professional office, you could do professional retail, and it's 800 to 1,200 square feet. Very small footprint, very little tenant finish. The FF&E costs are very minimal. You're talking about, 2 to 3 employees. You're talking about a couple computers, a couple desks, a couple phones, and you're off and running. So the ideal candidate that we look for, one, no staffing experience is required. Some of the record holders that we have are held by people that have no staffing experience. So the fastest to fast start school, we do a fast start award for the first 52 weeks. The owner of that record had no staffing experience whatsoever. Some of the owners of some of the other records, we do a fast start on 12 weeks and a fast start on 26 weeks. Those have been held by people that have absolutely no staffing experience whatsoever. So sales background, that's the important one. B2B sales, that's a critical component. It's very helpful to have that background. Without it, your learning curve is going to be much greater. And I would say we're going to run you probably through a little bit more of a rigorous qualification schedule if you don't have that B2B background experience. Executive experience, P&L knowledge is helpful, not necessary. High energy, positive, that's one that obviously any entrepreneur needs. As an entrepreneur, you have to have a lot of energy. It's not an easy process to be an entrepreneur. You're getting hit from all different sides all the time. So you have to have the ability to rebound. You have to have a lot of energy. Customer service oriented, you're dealing with people. It's a people business. We have clients, we have applicants, everybody wants to be happy. And so you have to have a customer service mindset. Background, as I mentioned, is required for IT and healthcare. And then required liquid capital is 150,000, and the net worth requirement is 175,000. Training, our training is very extensive, and it's so broad. There's so much to it. We've broken it out in digestible chunks. So we start with an onboarding. We do 8 hours of onboarding, and the idea behind the onboarding is this is where we get all of your users, all your any software that you would need to set up. We get you set up, make sure everything's working, everything's connected, everything's synced up and working properly. We get up all the initial training, the learning management system, get you in all those, do the overview on that. But that's the onboarding that kind of launches your platform for success. Then we have about 75 hours of online and virtual training. So much can be done online these days and self-paced that we are doing more and more of that as the months go on, and we're constantly adding to our online training. That also makes it easier when you onboard somebody that you can plug them into the online training and not have it diluted from your retention level, but you can just plug them right into the online training. We do 40 hours of classroom training here in our offices in Overland Park, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City. And then we do 24 hours on site, 3 days on site at your office when you open. So we go through every single bit from operations, services, cash, control, customer service, everything you could possibly imagine that would need to be touched on in training, we're going to go through in those segments. And then ongoing support. So the founders, as you can see, we're involved in day-to-day support. I attend every single founders call. I attend every single discovery day. I attend every single training. James, my business partner, same way. He basically steps in at the level of training, and then we kind of have our handoff, and then he oversees that onboarding process and that initial launch period. And then about 3 months after your launch, that's when you'll start, working individually with all the other team members outside of the founders. But we're here every day. We work hard every day. Long runway. We have no anticipation of going anywhere anytime soon. So the support team, we handle your first 12 weeks of appointment setting. That's a big deal. So when you launch your office, you're going to launch your own marketing plan that we designed and give to you. But at the same time, we're going to have our support team doing the same thing. So we're going to be sending out this customized mailer that we have produced. We're going to be setting appointments for you in your market at the same time you're doing it. And the design is to get you off to a fast start. We have a case study we're working on right now to show kind of the improvement of that. But I hope to include that in our next item 19, just to show you what that first 12 weeks can do in terms of launching your business. It's a very good catapult for your business. We do weekly sales and recruiting debriefs. You'll do that with our support team here when you first launch, all the way up until you're comfortable. And usually what will end up happening is you go from daily to weekly to bi-weekly to monthly, and then you're kind of out on your own. Extensive back office support, as we mentioned. There's literally hundreds of items that we touch on your behalf that you'll never have to worry about. Weekly onboarding calls we talked about, and then monthly group training sessions. So every month we do, it's called Inform. We do a monthly training, and it usually rotates between operations, sales, management. And in operations and sales, we invite the entire staff. So your staff can be included on those. We typically will have 30 to 45 minutes of a training session that is sometimes led by somebody at the support team, and then backed up with one of the active franchise owners that can share, day-to-day real life stories of what they're doing. And then the last component of it is Q&A. We also do owner roundtables where it's just owners on these calls, and they're allowed to get into more details if they want to talk about profit and loss statements, or they want to talk about sensitive topics like hiring or firing, a seasoned internal employee, or compensation that recommendations, so they can get into the weeds without their staff being on the call. So as a recap, we have extremely large territories. We reduce our royalty fee and marketing fee for the first 6 months. Our owners generate nearly $2 million in revenues. They typically break even in about 7 months. We have a proprietary X factor that creates a great recurring revenue model that allows our owners to focus on acquiring new customers. We're a brand that's strongly positioned for both times of high unemployment, low employment, conservative, liberal administrations. That can go both ways. And then our multiple verticals means owners can basically tailor their background into a niche or a vertical that we offer. And then we have a back office support system that takes the majority of the technical operations and, kind of down in the weeds of payroll, and takes that off your plate and allows you to service and sell and to maintain relationships with your candidates and with your clients. So with that said, that's the Nextaff overview. I am going to unmute our group here and see if I can do that and open it up for questions. Okay, I've opened it up to where you are allowed to unmute yourself. If you would like to ask a question, feel free and fire away.
Yes, this is Chuck Henderson. I'm from Louisiana. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Chuck.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
You mentioned that you gave an outline of the training period, and there was different segments or different venues, and that is over what period of time would that training be done? How long the period? Months or whatever? Days?
Sure.
Certainly.
So normally from the time that somebody signs on, which would be around the onboarding time, till the time that they go live, is about 90 days. So what we typically see
90 days.
Yeah, somebody would come on, do their 8 hours of onboarding within a couple weeks of signing on board. We then enroll them in the online and virtual. And so while they're looking for their space, they're getting guidance from us on the market, on office layout, lease negotiation, et cetera. So I'd say that online training, typically, even though it's 75 hours and can be done in 2 weeks, it typically takes them about 30 days to do that. And then we typically like to schedule the classroom training the week prior to that office opening. So I'd say, from the time they sign on board to the time that they are open and in business, I'd say average is about 90 days. It's been done much quicker, but average is 90 days.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is Adrienne Lee, and I have a question. It sounds like, it was a couple minutes late, and I apologize, but it sounds like you do both temporary and permanent placement, correct?
Correct.
So, with that, are you doing the same kind of profiling on for temporary positions, or is that really for permanent positions?
We'll do that for all positions depending on the client. So as you can imagine, if you have a client looking for, in the industry now, we call it direct hire. I think some staffing company got sued because they didn't offer a permanent position. So in the direct hire category, obviously a CFO, you might be doing a considerable amount of profiling and testing versus somebody putting widgets in a box. But what you do have on some of those profiles is you have like integrity tests, very simple, straightforward, short questions, but it can reduce your turnover. It can reduce your work comp. It can reduce a lot of things that can be done very, very quickly. So it really depends on the client. It depends on what category that we're recruiting for, on what components of this X factor here. So work sample tests is a very popular one we do. Structured interviews we do. Job trial, temp to hire is obviously what we do. Job knowledge tests, integrity tests. So we just kind of fill in the space. You can't necessarily have a person applying for an $11 an hour job take 2 hours worth of tests. So that's the blend with the client, trying to determine how to get the highest quality person with the least amount of hurdles for the candidate. That goes into the kind of the custom approach.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is Felicia.
Yes, this is Chuck.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Thank you. I joined a little bit late also. Can you talk a little bit about the real estate process and finding property and how that's handled?
Sure. So the real estate process begins almost immediately after signing the franchise agreement. The franchise owner will work with my co-founder, James Windmiller, offices next to me here, I'm pointing. But he'll go through and give kind of the ideal specs, kind of the ideal area that we'd be looking for. And then through the greatness of Google Maps, you can pretty much do kind of a driving tour of various properties. And we'll typically engage the help of a local broker once we get started as well. So, but James will help through all of the office selection components. And sometimes that's very easy. Sometimes we come with people that have done this before. I've had people walk into Discovery Day and show us right there in Discovery Day what they want in their office. They've already negotiated terms and they could sign the lease tomorrow. We have other people that have never done this before, and we will certainly hold their hand and guide them through the entire process. But that's a lot of what James, our COO, does in that initial phase, help with locating space.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Chuck, did you have another question?
Yes, I did. On the earlier slide, you showed I think it was the revenue in the first, was the slide on 7 months break even. And you have, yeah, there it is right there. The gross revenue, and that gross revenue, can you give me just a little bit more detail? What is that? Is that I'm assuming that's the fees that the franchisee is charging to the clients, customers.
Right. So the way our business model works is, let's say you find an employee that is going to make $20 an hour. And for our service of finding that person, screening them, et cetera, we're going to charge the client $30 an hour. So the gross revenue would be that bill rate of $30 an hour times, the number of people and the number of hours that we have out on the site.
Okay. And how do you, to follow up on that, how do you benchmark a fee to go into the market for our services as a franchisee? Is that based on the client, or is that just say, use your example, $30 and that's my cost, whatever and whatever. venue I'm in?
So what typically is the starting point for fee determination is pay rate. So what we'll do is we'll have a discovery call with a client, and we'll go in and we'll talk to them about the positions that they're seeking to fill. And let's use an easy example. Let's say it's a warehouse. They have 10 warehouse positions open, and their starting pay is $15 an hour. So that doesn't necessarily mean we have to pay $15 an hour. Sometimes we'll pay lower, sometimes we'll pay higher, but that's usually your target to give you some kind of indication of where the starting line is. So from that $15 an hour pay rate, we'll then do what in the industry is called a markup. And you'll mark that up 140%, 150%, 160%. And that goes into a lot of other smaller calculations. We have a bill rate calculator that we use. Once you're in the business for 3 months, you'll know it all off the top of your head about what you should be charging. But in the early days, we have a very simple calculator. Basically ask about 5 questions. You know, how many openings are there? What are the work conditions? How many other competitors are in here? How long before they can hire them full time? So questions like that help you determine, should I be marking this $15 wage up 140%? Should I mark it up 150%? Or should I be marking it up 160%? That we handle all through training. It's also something that we do as kind of your coaching as you roll out your first weeks and months. But there is a simple bill rate calculator that will help you determine that as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Kerry, is there a franchisee advisory council?
It's not a formal one that's put together, but I'd say it's an informal one in that every franchise conference, we do get the franchise owners together. Since we're a fairly smaller group, it hasn't gotten to the point yet where they need to select, 12 of the 100. Since, the last we had to postpone our franchise conference this year because we were going to New Orleans in September, and that obviously didn't work with COVID. But, in the preceding year, I think we had 12 or 15 franchise owners at the time. So, that was our advisory council. But yeah, they put together, in that meeting, they put together a national accounts policy. We did an update to our the way that we handle our collateral reserve. So yeah, they have inputs on all that. I would assume that as we grow larger, they're going to have to vote on who's representing them, because obviously trying to put 75 people in a meeting and get something accomplished becomes difficult. But so right now it's informal, but yes, there's one.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, it's Adrienne Lee. I got a couple more questions. How many franchisees do you have now? And also, I was looking on the FBA site, and it says you have an area development / master rep available. Can you talk at all about that?
Yeah, so we have awarded 30 franchises. We have 25 offices open currently. So on the area rep and the area developer, we have a few other verticals that we are looking at going into if we can find the right person. So we have a gentleman that we're talking to right now about skilled trades, for example. That's not a vertical that we're in. It's a very specialized vertical. It requires specialized insurance, a lot of specialized legal language when it comes to indemnifications, et cetera. And we are looking at discussing something with him about an area rep. We also have education as a vertical that is on our bench currently. Same thing. If we found the right person that came along that had a great background in that, then that would be something that we would consider. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is somebody that could lead the charge in vertical expansions.
So would that person actually be in charge of the other franchisees in that vertical in a certain area, or share in the royalties? I'm trying to understand if it's a traditional kind of regional developer or how.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a blend. So that area rep is going to be a little bit more in charge of helping open and then provide a very high level support function. Since our business, as you can see on this slide here, let me find it. Since our business has so many of these other components in the finance, the franchisor will still take all that. The management, we will still take all that. The software, job board, documents, we will still handle all that. So unlike a master franchise or somebody that's going to really dive deep and take over support for another franchise, their role is really going to be helping up at this above line here, identify acquired clients, and then helping on the recruiting. Because when you get into, let's say you get an education and you're doing substitute teachers, going into a school district is kind of a niche ability, and recruiting substitute teachers with the qualifications and everything else is a unique skill set. So the anticipation is that the franchisor is still going to do the bulk of this bottom line stuff. The area rep would help in one, identifying other franchise owners in that vertical, but then two, helping them on this very, very high level. And then we would do, more than likely, we would do probably a small split of the franchise fee and then a small split of the royalty fee. So we don't have any of those in existence right now. That's why I can't give you exact details. Some of that is still in discussion, but that's kind of the template that we're thinking.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Hi, Kerry. It's Jeremy Bollington. Can I just go back to the questions that Chuck was asking on the revenue side and that slide? I just want to make sure I understand so the gross revenue is basically effectively the billings to your customers. What comes out of that to get to that gross profit? Obviously, it's what's paid to the employees, but is there anything else coming out of that gross revenue to drop down to that gross profit number?
Yeah, good question. So you're correct in that you have the employees' pay, but what is also included that is all the direct payroll costs. So let's use the example I did earlier. And let's say it's $20 for a pay rate and the bill rate is 30. And let's just say that's all that franchise billed for that week. You're going to have a $30 gross revenue. You're going to have $20 in the temporary's payroll. You're going to have federal taxes, federal FICA, FUTA, SUTA, work comp. So anything related to the payroll that we call direct payroll costs included on top of the 20, and then the gross margin. So let's say you got a $20 pay rate. And let's say the direct payroll costs are another 10%. Let's use 20. So you got $4 in direct payroll costs. So now your cost of sales is 24 and your gross profit is 6. So there's a lot of components that go into it, but just think about it, anything related to the payroll function that an employer burden would encompass. And it is,
okay.
If you want to go into the real fine details of it, if you ever do, it's in our footnote of item 6, and it's called, or just review the FDD and search direct payroll costs, and that will tell you everything that's included in the cost of sales to get to the gross profit.
Gotcha. And then your royalty is calculated off gross wages or gross revenue?
Wages.
Okay, so using that your example there, that would be off that $20.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
This is Chuck Henderson again. How long is staffing agency? What is the general length of time that a client keeps someone on the staffing payroll versus gets it off and goes to, and that person would move over to the company's, the client's payroll? Is there any norm there?
Yeah, another good question, but also another one that is highly dependent on the vertical. So to give you some examples, IT, we had an office that was doing a lot of SAP contracts. I think the Cargill SAP implementation was a 10-year, multi-billion-dollar implementation. You'll have IT contractors that'll be on your payroll for years. TD Ameritrade, we had people out there for years. They never go on the company's payroll because they're doing a contract. Healthcare can be thousands of hours. It can be the same way. It can be a very, very long time before they convert to hospital or nursing facilities payroll. On commercial, now you have to kind of segment it into professional and light industrial. Professional tends to be a little bit on the higher end, maybe 600 hours, 800 hours. Light industrial can be on the lower end. 480 is about the lowest we see. But I'd say as a general rule, 600 hours. That's about the general rule on commercial, or at least where we would start. So, IT could be forever. Healthcare could be for thousands of hours. Commercial, 600 hours.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So with that said, that's one of the things that people look at. Obviously, we have to have the background in the healthcare IT, but it's something people look at sometimes and think, wow, IT, the margins are really high, the contracts go forever. But in IT, you're typically not getting orders for 20 people or 100 people or 500 people. So the volume is, and the volume's in commercial. IT and healthcare, they're both about 12 to 15% each of the market. So they are much smaller of an overall market, and it's harder to recruit. Obviously, think about trying to find how long it would take you to find 5 warehouse people to put widgets in a box versus finding 5 SAP people that do data migration within an SAP implementation. So, that's your trade-off.
Well, if this is Chuck Henderson again, to follow up on that, if you've got someone for 600 hours, I would think they would be in a position where they need benefits more than just in addition to you paying their taxes. Is there an offering of benefits through this process?
Yes, so we have 2 levels. You and I think the same in that you would think that would be a common need, but history tells us when somebody is going through the temporary to temp to hire process, sometimes they kind of view it no different than onboarding in a new company, and they realize there's going to be a waiting period. So even though we offer kind of a minimum value plan, and we also offer kind of the catastrophic plan, which is very, very affordable, most people don't take it. When the Affordable Care Act came out, the staffing industry thought they were going to go bankrupt because they thought there would be a run on the bank and every single person that had the option would jump on the Affordable Care Act. And I think probably less than 2% of our people even inquired about it. It's not very common. So I think they can kind of see the window that, I'm only here 600 hours, and the company I'm looking to go on does have full-time benefits, so I'll get by on what I'm doing. Or they're coming, they're at Cobra, they're doing Cobra through their previous employer or something like that. But we typically don't get a lot of people that enroll, even though it's offered.
Got it.
Yep. All good questions.
Well, I have another question. I don't want to hog the air.
No, you're fine.
You had the staff there, and you had a recruiter. I think it's 10 maybe. I'm not sure. You know what it is. Yeah. No, that's not it. And it says you start out with a recruiter. Can you just give me a little bit of generalities? How is that person's pay structured? And I know it's regional, but what are we talking about in a range of just a range of pay, total gross pay that would be for that position?
Sure. You're right. It's very regional, and we have some economic tools that will help us help you decide where you should be in the market. So we'll run a economic survey in your market, and it will give us a bell curve. Most of the time, I'd say in a general market, let's exclude let's exclude the San Franciscos of the world, and let's exclude the Wichita, Kansases of the world. But you're probably talking somewhere in that $17 to $22 an hour in terms of the base. And then we always suggest a bonus component where they are paid a percentage of the gross profit. And again, as the franchise owner is allowed their discretion to modify this in any way. But our suggestions are we do a ramping scale so that that person starts out at a fairly small percentage of gross profit if they're producing a minimum amount. And then as they start to climb, their percentage actually raises as well. So it's not like they get 2% of gross margin, whether they're doing 1,000 in gross margin or 100,000 in gross margin. They might get 2% of 2,000 in gross margin. If they get above 10, they might get 4% of the 10. If they get above 50, they might get 8% of the 50. And so what we have found is when you find the right players and you can offer a compensation structure that attracts A players, many times one A player will outproduce two B and C players, and your overall compensation outlay is actually less. Even though you're paying this person a lot of money, it's less than what you'd be paying two sub-performers. And what it does is it allows for great retention on our level, and it also allows you to attract players to your team because you can show them a compensation structure where they could be making a lot more than any other place in the city. And then once they're at that level, it's very difficult for an outside firm to recruit them away because our compensation package puts them out of reach.
I certainly believe what you're saying there.
Yeah.
One's better than two.
Yes.
One good one, that is.
One good one. Well, that's the critical component, right? That's what everybody comes to us to find. So we try and practice what we preach, and it's been a proven process for us. We've done it over and over, where showing that kind of compensation plan for the right player that's motivated and kind of gung ho on service and wants to get rewarded for that. You see people with a lot of drive show up.
Is there a benefits package available to a Nextaff employee? So say that recruiter or the admin?
So this is a tricky component in this model. So we have to be careful who we're talking about. So field employees, we call the temporaries, we call field employees, and then the internal staff for a franchisee, we'll call them internal staff. So an internal staff member of a franchise owner, that the benefits will depend on what the franchise owner offers. So we recommend offering full benefits package. We have connections coming from the industry. Obviously, we have connections with some PEOs that we will typically connect the franchise owner with so that they can tap into a benefits package that's much better. They might be able to go out and do it on their own as a 1-2-man shop. So, but yes, I would say the majority of our offices offer their full-time staff some kind of benefits package.
Okay.
If they happen to be too small, like, as you guys may have seen being entrepreneurs in your lives, is you try and go get a benefits package for you and one recruiter can sometimes be difficult. So if for whatever reason they need to get 3 employees or 5 full-time employees, then a lot of times what they'll do then is they'll do a kind of a benefits offset or a stipend and just pay an additional amount that's to be used for benefits. So, but I'd say most of them offer some kind of plan already.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. If anybody has any final questions. I appreciate all the feedback and all the questions. They're all good, detailed questions. I like it.
This is Chuck Henderson. Real simply, I didn't see this anywhere in the information, but the marketing cost per the pro forma or the operational financial, what percentage of that would that normally run as percentage of gross revenue?
As a percentage of gross revenue, let me do that. We don't quote it in revenue. So in our documents, everything we do is based off gross wages. And we did that so it would be easier for a franchise owner to calculate their costs. So if you see here on item 6 here, so it's 75.75 of gross wages. And so anything you see in our item 6 is going to be off this gross wage number. So if you've ever been in the business where you had to mark something up, if you mark it up on your starting cost, so let's say that $20 pay rate, you mark it up, and if you know what your costs are, right? Your royalty cost is, let's say, 8% of that 20, and your marketing cost is 0.75% of that 20. When you start negotiating bill rate, if you negotiate higher, that profit goes to you. If you negotiate lower, the profit lessens to a degree, but you always know what your costs are, and your cost of sales kind of become fixed. With the competitors that charge on the revenue or the margin, it creates a circular reference. So every time you change the bill rate, well, now your costs change, and depending on what it is. So it's just something that we noticed when we owned the payroll and the PEO company, that it was so much easier calculating fees on the wage, because then it can be fixed versus the circular reference of doing revenue. But yeah, it's 0.75 of the gross wages.
Thank you.
Sure. Kara or Lana, is there anything you guys want to add in our last few minutes here? Anything that you think needs to be covered?
No, I think you did a great job. You covered everything thoroughly.
Yeah, I agree. I think we covered everything. That was great. Thanks so much, Carrie.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate it. This is going to be recorded, so I think if anybody wants to get a copy of this or wants to watch it again for more details, I think probably connect with Kara or Lana, and we'll get that out to you. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Very, very important.